welcome to the New Earth podcast, which will guide you towards awakening and the embodiment of your highest self through holistic living advice, science, yoga, personal experiences, and expert guests. Let's grow together and build a new Earth. I'm Nancy Crupi. I'm a scientist and I have a PhD in biology and 15 years of international scientific research experience in fields from inflammation to aging, neurobiology, nutrition, metabolic disorders, and much more. I'm also a Kundalini Awakened spiritual teacher, healer, and coach, and I practice and teach Kundalini Tantra.
And I'm Robie Newman-Paris. I'm a biologist with experience in neuroscience, and I've studied the ancient yogic sciences as well as other Eastern philosophies with gurus and yogis while spending a year and a half in India and in Bali. I now teach Kriya Yoga, breathwork, and meditation and help guide people in their spiritual development.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the New Earth podcast. Today we're going to be giving you guys some keys into living a healthy, balanced, holistic life. And these are some practices, some habits, some ways of living that will really help you kickstart your healing process, open up to awakening, and really get that grounded, balanced feeling in your life that will help you be happy and healthy all the time.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Robbie. Absolutely. Today, we're going to be talking about so many interesting things, so many practices, so many different habits and routines you can adopt to make your life better in a holistic way. And I feel like we should start, as usual, from our own experiences, in the sense that, again, this is a podcast in which we try to give people not just knowledge that we acquire on the books, but knowledge that we acquire firsthand. And that's way more important. And as a scientist, I know how much important that is, especially for everything that is going on today and how science is being so much criticized for how not truthful a lot of things are. So for me, especially, it's very important to give people my own personal experience of what actually works and what doesn't work. And yours, Robbie, as well. I feel like we have different experiences because, first of all, I love the fact that I'm a woman, you're a man. And so we really bring both aspects of how to improve the life of both sexes. And I think this is incredibly valuable. And also, I think in general, we have a very different also type of history and experience because we grew up in the United States with a completely different culture and habits. And you had to get away from a lot of different kinds of things that I didn't have to get away from, such as fast foods and things like that. And instead, I grew up in Italy where lifestyle is very healthy, but there's not a lot of, for example, physical activity and a lot of other things that are very much undervalued sometimes. And so what is your own personal practice that you started, how you started and how you improved your practice in, for example, food and diet?
Yeah, I agree. Let's start with one specific aspect, which is food, and we'll dive into all the different aspects as we go through this episode that we'll be talking about. But about food specifically, I'm very lucky that my parents raised me with a pretty healthy diet, especially considering how most Americans eat. I occasionally had fast food, but it was a rare occurrence. Ate lots of fruits and vegetables. I didn't eat red meat growing up. So for me, I think there was a big kind of head start as compared to a lot of people. I didn't develop those same cravings that a lot of people develop when they're in their early childhood. If you grow up drinking sodas, eating candy, eating all of these unhealthy fried foods, really processed carbohydrates, then you're just training your body to want to consume more of those. And, these things have also been specifically engineered to be especially tasty for people. And when you're a young kid, you don't really have that same discernment. So when you eat something and it tastes good, even if you don't really feel so good afterwards, you might not put those two things together in the same way that an adult might. So in that sense, I've had a very lucky upbringing that I was able to not develop those unhealthy habits from the get-go. And I guess for me, a lot of things that I've been working on lately, and I think that are really important lessons are, number one is what I call like intuitive eating, which is basically the process of kind of looking into your body and feeling, okay, maybe there's something that's particular that I'm craving for. And oftentimes that actually relates to some kind of nutrient deficiency that you might be experiencing. So if, for example, you have a really strong craving for walnuts or for like some kind of nuts, There might be a specific compound in there that you're missing. There might be some part of that particular group of foods that you're missing in your diet. I know for me as a vegetarian, one thing that I'm often missing is iron because there's very little iron in most vegetarian things. So sometimes I get like a really strong craving for cheese. And, that's one of the sources that I can get iron for. And I'm not taking iron supplements, which I do from time to time. At the moment, I'm not. But when I'm not taking them, I feel this maybe a stronger craving for dairy products sometimes because maybe my body is telling me, okay, you need to get this iron from somewhere. Let's try to get it from the dairy. It knows intuitively, your body knows where these things are found and knows how you can feed yourself properly. So it's really just about listening and feeling into, okay, not what does my mouth feel like it wants to taste, but what is my body kind of yearning for in a deeper sense. So that's the first thing. I think another thing is about kind of when I eat and also listening to my body. A lot of times, especially in the past, one habit that I have been working on a lot that I did unfortunately develop is kind of eating out of boredom. And I guess this is something that a lot of people do. You eat because of anxiety, you eat because of boredom. There's so many factors that cause you to eat that aren't just hunger, which really should be the reason that you're eating and kind of the only reason that you're eating. Maybe there's a few other occasions, you're at a big social event and you have to impress people and you're not hungry, but you take a couple little bites of food to show them that, you're invested. But that shouldn't be the regular situation. But yeah, when you're constantly snacking all day, you have this void or this kind of like feeling of lack or this feeling of unease inside of you, and you're using that food to try to soothe that and satiate that. And even if it might feel like it's doing a little bit, this habit is not healthy because especially when you're in that mode, you're going to be drawn to foods that are less healthy. Maybe, instead of eating the apple or the handful of nuts, you might go for the bag of chips, or you might go for something that's a little bit more stimulating in that sense. So that's something that I've definitely been working on. And then another thing, I definitely have an habit of eating very fast and not kind of like paying attention to my stomach when it's full. And that leads to a couple things that aren't good. Number one, eating too much, which is kind of the obvious conclusion from this. If you eat very fast, your stomach's not going to have time to properly tell you when it's done eating. And you eat too much, and then you start to feel lethargic. Your body has to invest a lot more of your energy into actually digesting, which could have been used for other things. And a lot of that nutrients that you're going to eat are actually just going to go to waste because you already have a surplus of them. And when you have too many calories and it also can lead to less healthy bodies and you're retaining things that normally wouldn't get retained, not processing things correctly. Overloading your stomach is never a good thing. And then also you're not really taking the time to consciously eat and to there's a really interesting Buddhist saying that I like to try to practice whenever I'm mindful enough to do it, which is to drink your foods and chew your liquids. And it might sound strange at first when you hear it, but what it means is that you should chew your food enough times that it becomes almost like a liquid before you swallow it. And you shouldn't chug your drinks. You should sip them slowly. And this just builds on the consciousness process while you're eating, where you can take the time to feel grateful. You can take the time to actually fully feel you're integrating these nutrients into your body because that's what really food is. Food becomes our physical form. And the more consciousness and awareness we can bring to it, the more of that energy we can actually integrate through the digestion process. So yeah, those are the main things that I'm working on at the moment. Obviously, like I said at the beginning, for a lot of people, the biggest struggle is something that I never really had to deal with as much, which is, breaking out of those cravings for unhealthy foods, dealing with unhealthy eating habits, getting rid of more processed foods in your diets. Whenever you're at the grocery store, it's important to look at the ingredients and, like see how many things are on there, see how many of the things you actually know what they are, how many of them are, very, very processed artificial things. One interesting thing that they do have in a lot of, let's say like cereal bars or other kind of heavily processed combined foods is cellulose. And cellulose actually, where they get it is actually from wood, like sawdust. So it's a product of like the lumber industry, which is something like, we're not beavers, we're not actually able to process this. And actually cellulose is not digestible for our digestive system. It's like, you're eating, fine particles of wood, but they put it in there as a filler, as some kind of like binding caking agent. And it's in a lot of different foods. And that's just one example of it. So like one ingredient you should look out for, like artificial food dyes, high fructose corn syrup is another really bad one. That one's very, very hard for your body to break down. And it also builds, negative populations of gut microbiomes rather than healthy ones. So, I mean, these are just a couple of things, but there's so many different things that you should look out for in the ingredients list. So just something to check and try to stick to organic foods as much as you can. Try to stick to foods that, let's say have less than 5 ingredients. If there's something that's been made of a bunch of different things, if at all possible, just get single ingredient foods and cook more from scratch yourself. That's one of the best ways to actually know 100% what's going into your body, be able to filter that out. And obviously, when you're going out to eat a lot, you don't really know what you're getting. But then there's another process of discernment where, you're choosing the restaurants that are, cooking in these healthy ways. And it can be hard to tell sometimes, but generally there's a good sense of it when you kind of look at the branding of the restaurant, look at their menu. You can even ask the server, like what's going into this product. And obviously fast food is kind of the worst of it. You never really gonna get a straight answer from that. Is so much, reused oils. That's another really bad thing. A lot of people have sensitivities to oils, and myself included. And what I've noticed in my own kind of intuitive sensing into my body is that it's less about the specific type of oils. Definitely some of them I feel better with than others, but what really gets me is when I consume oil that's been cooked in many times, maybe more than like 1 or 2 times. That really, really gives me this heavy kind of like lethargic, almost queasy feeling when I eat this kind of food. And so it's just being aware. And then, obviously we're not perfect. So there might be a time where you're really running late. You don't have another option. You end up getting the less healthy option because it's quick and it's available. What I would say in that circumstance is just, be aware in your body, really feel into that feeling that it feels when you consume something that's not really serving you, and kind of sit in that uncomfort a little bit and really feel what it feels like so that you build up the habit of more of aversion towards this type of food. And you're more encouraged to get healthy things just from learning from your past experiences and your past mistakes.
Yeah, so many things to talk about. I feel like before diving into my own experience, I would like to ask a
Mhm.
few questions about
Yeah.
yours. So first of all, I feel like definitely I resonate with you also on the fact that you eat very quickly. I think it comes a lot from our personality type because we are
Mm.
like, I really like to do a lot of things. I'm always overly busy. I never have really time to eat properly, although now I'm trying to really take that time for myself, but I've always been very much in a rush. I'm always doing a lot of things at the same time. So I think it comes really from the fact that we're not fully present sometimes. You're just trying to do
Mhm.
the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so I'm really practicing being present now, as you're doing as well, with my food. Like really, like what I usually do is I take my first bite, and then after I start taking my first bite and my body starts getting acquainted to the nutrients and the things that I have in my food, then I start like kind of focusing, and I kind of do a short meditation to tell my body to accept all those nutrients and to get
Mhm.
ready to receive them. And then I start being grateful to all the people that made those things. And you do the same. Like we kind of want to, you want to be grateful to the whole supply chain that allowed that food to be on your table. And once you do that, you start realizing that um, when you start thinking how your food is being made, such as fast food and other things, right? And you start trying to be grateful for that supply chain, you realize there's not much love in it. And so you start also becoming aware of your food choices and the fact that you need to start having better ways of choosing your food, because otherwise you're actually putting in your body things that do not contain love, are not made with love, are just made by machines and in a massive way that doesn't actually allow for things to be done properly and for fruit and produce to be properly ripened, or like all the things that ultimately become lack of nutrients into the food, like lead to lack of nutrients into the food you're eating, and lack of love and lack of proper attention to details in the food you're consuming. And I'm wondering whether, because I also like, there is a lot to say about reconnecting with our chakras, for example, with the Manipura chakra, solar plexus, for what concerns being able to reconnect with our body and to feel the cravings that our body has and how they actually feel like. And I'm going to talk about that later. But I was wondering, because I didn't know that you were actually raised vegetarian or vegetarian.
Not vegetarian. I just didn't eat red meat. So I still ate poultry and fish, but no
Okay.
no beef, no lamb, no red
Okay.
meats, no mammals at least. So I did
Okay.
eat that for a while, but it was after I went to college. I ate it for maybe like five years or so.
Okay, but not during your childhood. So this is
Not
interesting
during
for
my
me.
childhood, yeah.
So it's interesting because you see, when our body, as we said, it's trained during our childhood to recognize the certain nutrients are in certain foods. So you have never seen red meat. And so for your body, like not never, but like during your childhood. And so for your body, the source of iron is something else, right? And so when you
Mhm.
have cravings of when your body needs iron, when your body needs B12, when your body needs things that are usually contained in red meat, what what do you feel like you crave?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I think it's more dairy products. Like I think it's cheeses, maybe yogurt, things like that. I mean, maybe I think there's definitely some iron and also fish and dairy, although I haven't really had any cravings for that since I went vegetarian, which was like 4.5 years ago at this point. I've definitely noticed there's some times where maybe I had a slight iron deficiency where I kind of felt more lethargic, but at that point I started taking iron supplements and that did help with that process. But yeah, I think it's mostly dairy. I think there's some iron, a little bit of it in eggs as well, and I do tend to eat a lot of eggs, so that also gives me supplemental iron.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Because I feel like, yeah, like we definitely, our body learns where to
Mhm.
find the nutrients based on what you give it to it, right, in your childhood. And so it's interesting for me how ultimately your body can find things everywhere they are. It's just that they're going to be different things, right? And so, and uh, to go back to the chakras, I have realized by myself that I also used to be very disconnected from my body. So I'm Italian. So in Italy, food is not just about eating, it's an art. It's like
Mhm.
an art and a passion, and it's about gatherings with your family, and it's about giving love to each other, and it's about gifting, and it's about receiving. So food is connected to a lot of things in Italy, and is part of a whole network of activities that are completely disconnected from the actual nourishing side of it. Ultimately, we have very healthy traditions in the sense that our habits are very healthy, especially considering, for example, now there are a lot of, and I personally published articles on the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is the rhythm that our body has and goes through during the day that basically aligns with the cycle of light and with how we eat during the day. And it's very important to follow our circadian rhythm for what concerns eating, because you guys can find my articles on my website at my Google Scholar. It's searching for my name. And the last one that I've published was about how different also time restricted eating affects your health. And so you can see how um, really different schedules of how you eat can affect your health in general. And the best schedule seems to be from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or so. Like, let's say you want to eat within 8 to 10 hours from when you start having your first bite, you want to finish eating everything and then fast for the remaining time, and only drink water or a worst juice. And so that's really what we already tend to do in Italy in a sense. And not like we they used to do it. Now today it's different because today we also have been influenced a lot by the Western culture, unfortunately. And so we have a lot of also fast foods, not as much as here, but we also have fast foods, and we also eat at any given time, day and night. But when my grandpa, like when my grandparents were not even my age, but like when I met them, they were eating like this, like they were eating only during the daytime, and they were not eating at night. And so they had this kind of lifestyle already. And not only that, but in Italy, we have this um, a much more strict schedule in terms of when we eat. And so, for example, there is like breakfast, we have breakfast, and then half the morning you have your snack, and then a lunch,
Mhm.
you have lunch, and then half afternoon you have a snack, and then dinner, you have dinner. So this is a very strict schedule, and people actually keep you accountable for that, because we do eat
Mhm.
at the table with the family, and we do have our lunch break. So if you don't do those kind of things, you kind of miss on the social part. And so there is a lot of peer pressure in maintaining this schedule, which is ultimately very, very healthy because your body gets set to know every day what kind of routine the food is going to follow. And so it knows exactly when to get ready to receive food. So that's a very healthy way of eating because it allows your body to avoid building up toxins and byproducts due to undigested food and unprocessed food because it's ready to receive the food you give it. But since I started coming to the United States, my schedule and my diet completely changed because first of all, here people eat a lot more protein than in Italy. In Italy, Mediterranean diet has a much smaller percentage of protein, like 15, 20% of your calories should come from protein really in the Mediterranean diet. And we eat a lot of legumes as well. And instead here, people eat a lot of meat and a lot of salmon. And not only that, it's really like the source of our food is much, much more healthy because it comes most of the times, especially I grew up in the south of Italy in a small village where most of my food came straight from the farmer, straight from the farm, straight from really the producer of that food. And instead here it's mostly massively produced, and your salmon contains colors, which for me is like mind-blowing that why would your salmon contain colors? Or like the meat, it like shrinks a lot when you cook it because it contains a lot of hormones. So all of these things that really are totally like not really healthy for you here are the norm, and people believe that they're the norm, or having berries all year round. Berries are in a certain are seasonal, like things are seasonal for a reason. And instead, we have everything all the time, every time, which is not normal because you don't get the best out of any food that you eat. And instead, what we used to do, for example, in the south of Italy, is we have a lot of preserves like jams. We make jams a lot. So we will go in the fall, you go and harvest the mushrooms in the mountain. And those are wild mushrooms that you harvested yourself. Then you cook them or dry them or make something with them, and you freeze them and then you consume them throughout the year. Same for the berries. My mom, like my favorite jam that my mom makes is whole blackberries harvested in the bushes in the mountains. And it's just mind-blowing. And it's just
Does she
another
still make
level.
that?
Yeah, I have some in the fridge.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
come
for
visit
sure.
you soon.
It's the best. It's whole berries. Are you kidding me? Blackberries. And the blackberries that you
My
harvest,
favorite berries.
yeah, but if you actually harvest the wild ones, which is what we don't even think of buying the blackberries in the grocery store. That is not even an option. You go in a wild place, far away from traffic. That's important because you don't want to eat pollution, right? So it's very important for us. All the things we input in our body really has to come from a source that really it's not polluted, not full of chemicals, and so it has to be clean. And so these are wild berries that just grow. And so you can just go and harvest them for free. And then we harvest like kilos and kilos of those things. And so we bring them home and we make huge pots of this jam. And then once you make the jam, you have those berries in their own perfect way with all their nutrients throughout the year. And you don't need to buy berries in summer when berries are not seasonal. You can buy them I'm saying summer, like I don't even remember what season they actually are exactly, but like they're like throughout September, I think we usually go to harvest berries in that area. But like there are times in which they're not seasonal, right? And so we have our preserve for that. And this is for everything, right? And so instead, when I started coming here, I started completely changing my diet. I started eating a lot more protein, a lot more meat, especially that I wasn't used to, and a lot of food that was not really ripe or properly grown and properly cultivated because it was mostly unseasonal. And even when it is seasonal, even produce can be grown through hormones. And when you grow things through hormones, what the food does is it really mostly grows by absorbing water. And so it doesn't actually make all the nutrients that it's supposed to make because everything takes time. And if you try to speed up the biological processes, you're just mostly giving water to the plant. And so what you eat is the same small zucchini, but bigger, with the same amount of nutrient, the same type of density of nutrients, but just bigger. So you're actually impoverishing the food by using these hormones and these modalities. And what we ultimately eat and buy is the same concept as buying the shrimp that is soaked in water, or the chicken breast that is injected with water just for it to make it weigh more, so that when you go and buy it, you pay more for it, it's compared to what you're supposed to be paying. And then when you put it in your pan, it shrinks a lot. So that's the actual amount of nutrients it contains. And it's the same for produce, but in a different way, because they accumulate a lot of water. And then what you actually are eating in terms of nutrients is like 1/4 of what you're actually buying. So it's the same thing, but for plants, instead of injecting or soaking them into water, what they do is they make them grow through hormones. And so it's the same thing. So it's all of this to say that all of these things have an effect that ultimately impoverishes your body of nutrients, of all the things you need. And when I started realizing that I was really like, my body was not used to it, and I started like bloating. I remember at that time I was married, and during the first 6 months that I've been here, I was by myself. My ex-husband joined me afterwards. And when he came back, he's like, "You're so like bloated. Like, why are you so like much bigger?" And I wasn't doing anything strange, but I feel like I was just eating things that contained a lot of hormones. And I was very like, I had accumulated a lot of water in my body that I wasn't used to. I didn't have when I was in Italy, by eating the same things supposedly, but made and raised and cultivated in a completely different way. It completely changed the effect. And so those things are very important. And so I started realizing I restarted having my own diet and cooking my own things in my own way as I was used to. And the water is so important here as well, because like I only cook with filtered water, for example, because I realized that it really kills the chemicals that the food contains. Like the first time I made soup here, I almost cried, because I was used to cooking and to smelling what I was cooking. And as I was making this soup, I could not smell any of these things. I had put so many things in it, and the air did not smell like the things that I was cooking. And I was like, how is this even possible? Like, I'm cooking a lot of veggies, a lot of very good things. How is it possible I can't smell it? And then I realized that if you don't filter it, if you don't use filtered water here, that contains, basically, it bleaches your food. It literally bleaches your food, because it contains chloride and a lot of chemical compounds that are not supposed to be in the water in general. So it's another mind-blowing thing from the United States. But I think the main really change that I suggest to everybody to do to like in my diet came when after realizing all of that, and I started going through my own awakening, my own spiritual awakening, I started reconnecting with my Manipura chakra, which is at the navel. It's basically at the navel and on the back of your spine. Let me see if I can show this. It's like basically here, and then on the back. And what you want to do is really to, like, I teach people Kundalini Tantra, which is a way of reactivating the chakras. And specifically when I reconnected with that, it's as if my metabolism changed, and I started reconnecting with my cravings, as you were saying, because now I don't just eat what my bacteria, and we talked about that in the past episode with Emily. I don't just eat when my bacteria ask me to eat, because that's also, we don't realize how strong the bacteria in our intestine are and how much connected they are to our brain. I don't just eat what my body has been trained to like, and all the sweets and all that kind of stuff that it's easy to get addicted to. I really have cravings now that my body tells me. It just sends me sometimes, like, and you can feel that it's different. Like when you reconnect with your Manipura chakra, it really feels different, because ultimately, if for a plant, the roots are what take the nutrients up the soil and send them to the whole plant. For us, the roots are our intestine, because the intestine is where all the nutrients get absorbed by our intestine, right? And so once you reconnect with your roots, then you start having all of these thoughts of food that are different. Because when you start craving donuts, for example, it's almost a compulsion. And instead, when your body is telling you to eat something, it's almost as if something that in the middle of the day for no reason in the world, and not because you are stressed out, it pops up in your mind and is like lentils or cheese or eggs or any kinds of vegetable, fruit. I have a lot of cravings for different kinds of fruit often. So I'm going towards fructarianism, and also walnut. Walnuts are so important for you. So all of these things that have not just to do with nutrients needs, but oftentimes have to do with, for example, if you are very in anxiety, your body can be very inflamed. And so inflammation requires you to eat anti-inflammatory, antioxidant types of foods. And so like those also things like walnut or a lot of fruit or things that contain a lot of antioxidant, or eating a lot of medicinal food and mushrooms and herbs. So all those things, your body starts craving for those things, and it starts popping up. And obviously your body, and this is why it's so important. And that's why my question also for you, for what kind of food you were trained to eat as a child, because your food can only crave what it knows that exists in the world. And so having a diverse diet as a child, and if you have children, please make sure that they have a diverse diet as children, and they actually discover the real wild produce, the real wild foods, the authentic things, and not these massively produced stuff that really doesn't contain any nutrients, because that's how they train their body to recognize what to eat and what to crave based on their nutrient deficiencies. And so as like again, like because thanks to my upbringings, thanks to that, now when I need food, when my body sends me these cravings, it sends me cravings that are really related to what I will eat during my childhood, not what I will eat in the United States when I first got here. So I never crave donuts. I crave lentils, you know what I mean? And so it's really my body telling me these things. And obviously I also have cravings, like I want not donut, because that's not something I really crave. I really eat much, but like sweets sometimes. I crave a lot of chocolate sometimes, but chocolate is also something that can be good for you. If you eat dark chocolate, that's so good for you. And so I think in general, to have a holistic way of approaching food and approaching your diet and your health. First of all, as Robie said, you need to really reconnect with your body and to your cravings. And one way of doing that is by reactivating your Manipura chakra, but also be observant and start eating slower so that you can actually appreciate the food and train your body to recognize what nutrients are in the food, because a lot of nutrients are directly digested and absorbed through your mouth, through your throat, through your stomach. So the upper part of our intestine already absorbs carbs, glucose, sugars, minerals. Those things are directly absorbed in the upper part of our intestine. And instead, protein and fats are digested and properly absorbed and processed in the lower part of our abdomen, of our intestine. And so certain things, if you start eating slower, you're going to start absorbing those things already, and you don't need to go through to overeat and to eat things that you don't need, because you're already absorbing enough. And yeah, I feel like these are my main suggestions for it. And definitely overeating can be a pretty intense thing to do for your body, because it sends you into this lethargic state. And especially if you're trying to have a more spiritually healthy life, this is something that now it's on my priority list, to stop overeating, because overeating can really make you drift a lot from your highest self and make you drift a lot from your center. And it's difficult. You can't get out of it until you finish digesting. So it's really something you don't have control over. It's like once you drink a poison, then you just need to wait for it to just get rid of, like for your body to get rid of it. And so it's very important to not overeat and to keep being observant with your body and be like, okay, I've eaten enough. I don't need any more of it. And that's difficult. We all have the same problem. I and Robbie have the same problem. And we're really trying to be spiritual aware and to really meditate and to really thank our food and be grateful. But still, overeating is a real problem, because we often have a very stressful life, and it becomes, even if it's not due to stress, we just don't have a lot of time. And so we need to restart giving ourselves this sacred space, which is eating, like I used to do in Italy, to sit around our table with a family and to take the proper time to eat whatever you need to eat. So I think that is very, very important. Although now I eat like once a day, twice a day, because that's what my body requires. And so I'm listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that I want to kind of give my take on from what you said. And I think the first one is, the eating schedule for the day. And it's what you said is describing basically the 16-8 intermittent fasting protocol, which is, there's been so much research that's been done on this. And it's really the best way for you to eat because, it takes a lot of energy for your body to digest your food and it needs to have time to recover afterwards. Your cells have to go through this process of being able to reboot and restart. And when you're constantly feeding them more and more stuff, they're just stuck in that processing time. They don't have the time to rest that they need. It's not just our mind and our physical, like skeletal muscles that needs rest. It's also, all of our internal organs. They all need a break too. I mean, besides really our heart. That's the one that if it takes a break, it's not a good thing. But everything else really needs a break. So yeah, the 16-8 is something that kind of has happened for me without so much conscious effort. Um, Generally when I wake up in the morning, I'm not hungry until, maybe like 11 o'clock anyways in the morning, even if I'm getting up pretty early, sometimes even later than that. So I end up not eating my first meal of the day until 11 to 12 usually. And then if I eat dinner by, 7 to 8 at the latest, then I'm in that window. And that for me has been pretty easy. I definitely do have snacks throughout the day when I'm getting hungry. And that's kind of like the one thing that I think I could be a little bit better with. I think that there's also a point where in modern society we've gotten used to just, always having a full stomach or always having some food in our stomach. But it's okay to feel hungry a little bit. Just because you're a little bit hungry sometimes doesn't mean that you necessarily need to eat right away. Sometimes it's a good thing to kind of take that little break rather than, maybe you get home at 5 and you're going to eat dinner 2 hours later. Maybe instead of like, having a little snack then because you're already feeling hungry, you just wait those 2 extra hours so that you give that hunger enough time to build up and really like, push yourself a little bit. Sometimes that little bit of uncomfort actually builds strength and it builds more self-reliance and self-awareness. And also it builds the discipline of, not overeating and, then oftentimes also when you have that snack, your stomach is already halfway full when you go to dinner and you still eat the same portion and then boom, you're right back in the overeating. So I think for me, the biggest thing that causes my overeating, well, there's two things. Number one, we already talked about, which is eating too fast. And number two is something that I just kind of need to work on, but also there's other solutions that could be more creative, which is that oftentimes I find it hard to make just one portion of food. And I get around that by either making enough for, one extra portion goes in the fridge, which again is good. Some things that I've noticed lately though is that oftentimes I do feel the energy and nutrient density of that food does go down in time when you leave it in the fridge. Some things it doesn't really apply as much, like if you're making a soup or a stew or a curry, these things that are in the liquid, I think they contain the nutrients and they contain the energy a little better. And also the flavors get better when you leave them in the fridge for 24 hours. But some of the things that are more dry, like or sauteed, especially if it's cooked in oil and it's left in that oil, if I go back to it the next day and heat it up again, it's again going back to that same thing I talked about with oil before. It's you're recooking in that oil and it's making it more difficult for your body to process. So I've been more careful about what I'm choosing to save and what I'm choosing to maybe share with someone else instead, or to specifically try to make less of a portion of so that I don't have any leftovers. But I think the best and most creative way to get around that problem is just eat with other people, share your food. And for me, that's another big thing. And it kind of leads into the second thing I really wanted to touch on, which is, eating and cooking, preparing your food with love. And really, this makes such a huge difference. Your food receives all of the energy that it gets when it's being prepared. So let's say let's put three different options out. You go to a fast food restaurant, the people are, stressed and anxious. They're not paying attention to your food. They're just mindlessly preparing it. You go to, let's say a semi-healthy restaurant where, they're putting a lot of effort into your food, but they're not maybe connected to their inner awareness. They're not fully present. They're not fully in their state of love, but they're at least giving it the full attention that it needs. And then the third is you in your own kitchen, maybe cooking a little bit more in a slow way so that you can really be aware during the process, really feeling grateful, not just during the process of eating, but also during the process of cooking, seeing, okay, I'm taking this tomato. It was literally grown on a plant. Wow, thank you, Mother Earth, for giving me this tomato, and then slicing it up and putting it in the pan. And then, thank you for this onion. Thank you for this garlic. Thank you for this cheese that I'm going to use. Thank you to the mother cow who provided this to me. Then when you eat that food, the difference is spectacular. I've really noticed that the more awakened, the more joyous I am when I cook, the more that food just like zings with this energy. And some of the times when I make even the best tasting food is because I've put that love into it. It's the difference between maybe like an 8 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10 is that it's that love. It's the secret ingredient that really that's why, everyone talks about like your mom's home cooked food being the best food you've ever had is because your mom has so much love for you. And when she's cooking that food, she's also thinking, even if it's only on a subconscious level, that she's going to be providing the nutrition that your body needs when she's giving you that food. And because of that care, that love, you receive that through the food, not just through the energy and nutrients from the food, but also from the energy that was put into the process of making it. And I think that's a really important thing. That's why, I very rarely go out to eat at this point. I almost always cook for myself because I can control all of the elements. I know that all of the ingredients I'm putting in are going to be basically whole ingredients. I know where they're sourced from. I know that I'm getting organic, like high quality sourced ingredients. I know that the conditions that they prepared in are going to be the best. I know that there's nothing that has been, left in the freezer for a really long time or, that wasn't stored properly so that the nutrients were leaching out over time. And I can just control all of these aspects. And another thing I wanted to touch on is just, even if you are getting whole ingredients, it is really important to try to, eat locally. And this means like, obviously we do live in a very interconnected world, and sometimes it can be fun to try things from a different place. And that's okay from time to time, but really be aware of where this food is coming from. How far did it have to travel to get to me? Let's say you take something like a banana, right? And you live in maybe the northern US. That banana doesn't grow anywhere near you. That's coming probably from Mexico, maybe even from Asia if it's, a more interesting type of banana. Maybe it's a little baby banana that doesn't grow in Mexico. In order for that to get to you in a semi-ripe state, they're actually having to harvest it from the tree in a state that's very much not ripened. And then oftentimes it's also sprayed with chemicals, which artificially increase the ripening process after it's off the tree. And really what this is doing is it's not giving this fruit enough time to fully mature, to fully receive the nutrients that it would get from the earth. And then when you eat it, you're getting about, 50% of what you would be getting if you ate something that maybe grew on an apple tree from a farm that was 20 miles away from you. Another thing is that nutrients do degrade over time, and it depends on the quality of food too, and it depends on the type of food. But, when you take something away from the source, let's say you pick an apple from the tree, you enter this slowly declining curve of the nutrients that are still going to be available in that apple. And obviously you can do things to preserve it, like you can freeze dry it, or you can dehydrate it. There's some things that can lock those nutrients in a little bit better. But, making jams, like you said, also is another example. But, if you are eating really old food, even if it is seemingly still fresh because it was painted with a wax coating so that it still retains the moisture, you're still losing a lot of those nutrients. So eating fresh, especially like what you said about where you lived in Italy, that's like the best way to do it. The more that you can really be involved in the whole process, not even just buying the ingredients from the store and cooking, but also just foraging, picking those things from your garden. It's really can be really powerful to have your own garden. You grow the food, everything that went into that process. Everything is within your frame of control. All of the variables, all of the love that was put in even growing those plants. And definitely where I am now, there's a lot of that going on. I do have a garden in my yard. I've been enjoying some tomatoes, cucumbers, fresh zucchinis, which has been a really big blessing. But it's something, even if you live in a city, you can, let's say you only have a window, you don't even have a yard, put a little box in that, grow some basil plants, grow some other herbs, because those things, number one, they're going to cost you a lot from the store. Number two, they're really easy to grow and they're not going to require a lot of input from you, but also you're going to know that plant, even that little part of what's going into your meal is being controlled by you and is you're giving it that love, and that love is going to be given back to you. So yeah, when you put all of these factors together, like you're looking about all of the different steps that all of your ingredients have, how far is it coming to get to you? How many of these steps can you control by, growing your own food by at least, maybe even you go to a farmer's market rather than going to the supermarket, and you know that there's fewer steps between you and that food. It's not going from the farm to a processing center to the grocery store and then to you. It's going from the farm directly to you. And, all these little things. And obviously, we're not all perfect, especially if you live in a really big city. It might be hard to find, fresh ingredients all year round from the farm. But the more little pieces little steps you can take in this direction, the more that you're going to get nutrition and positive energy and love from your food, and the more that it's going to support you in that way.
Absolutely, I agree. And there's so much about food that ultimately everything that we put in our body, it's important. And like if it's energetically charged, like the food is like it contains love or not, that's a huge difference. Like Reiki infusing of food, the Reiki infusion, it's a thing, it's a real thing. And I also I have a business that food business as well. And I say that my food is made with love, and it is. I literally play music while I make my food. I used to play jazz music. Now my taste changed, but I usually play music, and I literally do that with love. And I also host cacao ceremonies. And while you do that, you need to charge the cacao with love and with prayers. And so being present, being there while you do what you're doing makes all the difference, especially because so what I say is that love has a taste, and it's the taste of perfection. And so the taste of
I like that.
perfection is because
I
when you're
love
present,
that.
you're present, and when you're actually trying to cook things for someone, especially for yourself, but you're not doing it just to prep something real quick, right? You're doing it because you want to taste it. You want to take a break, and you truly want to nourish your body. You do it in a completely different way, because you're not just prepping something to shovel something in your mouth. You're actually trying to enjoy the process of cooking and of eating. And so if you want to enjoy, you need to make sure that the salt is enough, that the pepper is enough, that the spices you're putting are not, that everything is cooked, that the pasta is al dente, that the rice is properly cooked. So all those things that you do, that the garlic is caramelized, that the onion is caramelized, all of these little things that are milliseconds. It's a millisecond difference whether you're caramelizing your garlic or you're burning your garlic. It's a millisecond sometimes. And so being accurate to the millisecond level means that you're being very present, and you're really trying to make something perfect. So that's the taste of love. Taste of you being there and doing things in a perfect way. And so all of these things, that you put attention, and like in a restaurant, sometimes they put attention through love, sometimes they put attention through stress, because they're just paid to make something exactly in the way in which it's supposed to be. And so that's not love. It tastes perfect, but it's really not love anyways. And so like home cooking, it's huge. And that's why I'm also starting to, I also already host cooking classes in general, but because a lot of people don't have time to come over here and have their cooking classes here, I started organizing also virtual cooking classes. And so if you guys want to know more about that, you can ask me, and you can go to my website and check it out. And it's going to be every Monday at 6:30 p.m. just from your own kitchen, and you can learn to home cook. We love things based on the Mediterranean diet and the Ayurveda. And during our retreat, we're going to be cooking on that too. And we're going to also teach you how to best do that for yourself when you come back home from our retreat. So we're going to give you the tools to do that. But fasting is an incredibly important resource. And we talked about that in the episode with David Day. I think it was the second episode, because fasting, I think I want to start really fasting a full day every Monday, for example, or like one day a week. I want to just fully fast 24 hours. But overall, I have your same schedule. Like I usually don't eat in the morning, and I have my first bite around 11 a.m. or whenever I start finish cooking my lunch, and that's my lunch. And then I have a snack later in the evening, and that's the whole food I consume throughout the day. That's it. If I have anything during the morning, it's usually a piece of chocolate, because I like it gives me I feel like it contains a lot of antioxidants, and it gives me some kick to start my morning. But I'm always talking about dark chocolate or cacao sometimes. But that is it, really. So I eat mostly fruit and nuts and like rice and legumes. That is really my diet at this point, and like veggies in general and medicinal food. And fasting itself, it's so important because, as you said, if you go past that point of understanding that you're not simply craving, but you're really fasting and you enjoy that moment and you make it become a therapeutic time in your day, it becomes very powerful because I have my best mind clarity when I'm fasting. And so fasting can become an incredible tool for enlightenment and for meditation and for you to break through. Because when you overeat or when you're digesting, most of your blood is actually concentrated around your stomach and around your intestine. So it's not a joke that when your blood is somewhere else, you can't use your brain that much because literally your brain needs blood. And so the amount of blood you have in your veins is always the same. It's like 7 liters or 5 liters based on how your size. But that's it. And so if most of your blood is concentrated around your stomach because it needs to increase the temperature of your stomach for it to be able to digest your food and for your enzymes to properly function, then you don't have blood in your brain. And that means that the blood carries oxygen. And so you don't have oxygen in your brain. And so during the time in which we are digesting, as much as a boa that is digesting his prey for like a month, it's the same thing. We do that for like a few hours, like digestion lasts 3-4 hours, or digestion absorption lasts 3-4 hours in the end. During that time, if you overeat, especially, which is what a lot of people do, because during the day we don't have a lot of time to eat multiple times. So a lot of people try to eat a lot during lunch and then digest for the day. But from that time to 3, 4, 5 p.m., you're really not gonna be present because your stomach is using all the blood your brain is supposed to use. And so fasting, or as soon as you finish digestion, from that moment on, you start being in a fasting state. And the more you go far away from that moment, the more your body adjusts to the new level of glucose in your blood, and the more it becomes more clear-minded, because it's all a matter of like your cells. And I want to give like a little short introduction of how our body works in terms of like insulin and glucose as well, because ultimately our body is very good at adjusting whatever levels of nutrients we have in our body. So how it works with the nutrients is that the nutrients go in our blood and like go in our stomach, and then they get absorbed in the vessels that surround the stomach and the intestine. And then from those vessels, they go through the body, the liver, and they go to all of our cells, right? Because all of our bodies, ultimately, there are vessels and capillaries that go to each single one of our cells. So every cell gets the nutrients that is digested and filtered through the liver into the kidneys, and they go to the cells at the end, right? And so they get all these already digested and filtered food, like nutrients. But to get it, they need to have enough channels on their membranes so that those nutrients can actually go through and get into the cell. Or they need to have enough receptors of insulin receptor, for example. Insulin receptor is what determines how much glucose you can absorb from your blood, because you can eat a lot of sugar, but then if your cells and if your muscles especially don't express enough insulin receptor, insulin is the one that tells your cells, okay, it's like the button, right? It's like insulin presses a button that then tells the cell there is glucose in the blood, absorb it. But if you don't have enough insulin receptor, that insulin is not going to find any door to open. It's not going to find anything. And so the cell is not going to absorb the glucose. And so you're going to start having diabetes. And so this is where really we need to understand that we need to give our body the time, and fasting is that time that the body needs to reset and to readjust to the new level of nutrients in our blood. And for us to do that, for the body to do that, it needs time to sense how much nutrients are in our blood and sense what the cells need. And based on that, it's going to adjust the amount of receptors on the cells, and that takes time. And that is the time that you start reacquiring mind clarity, because it's the time that your brain cells take to also readjust their level of insulin receptor, like receptor for the nutrients, so that you start being, okay, I'm here, I'm receiving the nutrients that I have absorbed because I have given my body the time to also readjust the amount of receptor present on each cell. And this is one part of it. But also another part of fasting, and the reason why it's so important, is that fasting allows us to reset and remove all the toxins, as we said. And so it's imagine your body as a farm, or as an industry that is actually a warehouse in which there are all these little men, little humans doing things and doing the processes, and each one of them has a task in the supply chain, right? And so from the outside, there is someone that brings up all the vegetables and the produce and all the foods that this warehouse needs to process. And there is one cargo of this thing every hour. And so one cargo every hour, so there are enough people doing all the things they need, so that at the end they have processed all the food that you need to process, and they have the time to also throw the trash in the right place, in the right bin, and do the things in the right way, and clean up in between shifts, and do all the things that are accessory to and complementary to the process of simply processing that food. Because you don't just need to process the food, you need to remove the toxins, you need to make sure that you counteract microbes and infections, and you neutralize potential threats. So there are a lot of things that come with eating that need to be done together with eating. So imagine this warehouse. Suddenly, instead of having one cargo per hour, they start having two cargos per hour, or they start having one cargo that is huge, or they start having a very irregular schedule in how these cargos arrive. And so all these little humans in the warehouse are not actually capable of keeping up with the rhythm, because they don't know how to coordinate effort. They don't know when things are coming, when they're not. And sometimes there is a lot more workload for them as compared to their number. And so they don't have time to hire people from the outside to outsource their product. So all of these things start accumulating. And so if before they were able to throw the trash in the right bin, now they have to just put the trash away because they don't have time. And so they start accumulating trash. And then if they had time to clean up in between shifts, they don't have time anymore. So dirt started accumulating. And if they had time to coordinate effort among themselves, now they don't have time to talk to each other. And so they don't talk to each other. And because of that, the entire supply chain starts being messed up. So this is what happens when we don't really coordinate effort. Like when the body that takes the food and put it in our mouth doesn't coordinate effort with the cells of our body that process it, with the organs that process it, and with the organs that have to digest it and process it and absorb it. When we don't connect ourselves with our body, that's what happens. That the warehouse starts being blown away by all of these things and being unable to meet our needs and to tell us, look, it doesn't even have the time to tell us if there is no communication between the CEO of this warehouse, which is our brain, and the cells of our body. There is no capability of telling, hey, these cargoes are coming here too quickly. I can't handle these things. So all of this needs to be coordinated. And so it comes from fasting as well, because what fasting does to the warehouse is, okay, let's stop the cargo from coming for a while so that we have the time to clean up and clear out and cleanse and detox and do all the things we need to do and reset. And once we reset, we are ready again as anew to accept cargoes of food again and to be able to process it properly again and to coordinate effort. So ultimately what fasting does is a reset to your body that allows all of your cells to resynchronize and recoordinate effort in your organs to be able to again function properly. So I think the 16-8 schedule that you mentioned, which is simply to eat for 8 hours and then fast overnight for 16, and this is important overnight and not over the day. Because overnight eating is actually pretty detrimental for our health, because our body is also has been used to for millions of years, our bodies and the body of animals have been used to synchronize with the light time, like daytime. And so during daytime, you're supposed to eat, and night our organs don't function in the same way. So we're not supposed to eat that much because it can be very detrimental to our health, because the warehouse is not ready. Everybody is asleep. And so like there's nobody to actually process the food that you're putting in your mouth. And so it's very important to follow the daylight and to recoordinate with your body, really listen to your body and be like, okay, the warehouse personnel is telling me that they need this. Maybe let's send them this, and things are going to start working more like better in general. So I feel like in terms of like food and fasting and all of these things together, this is like a whole topic that is very deep, and we're gonna be like, this is going to be a 2-3 episode topic, because holistic health takes a lot of different things together, and we want to give you like deep information. And this is all knowledge that comes from my own research. I've been working on fasting for 5 years, and so I have really a lot of like hands-on experience on the effects of fasting on all different pathologies, from cancer to metabolic disorders to cognition to a lot of different things in muscle health and regeneration and aging. And so fasting, as much as eating, both things are fundamental, and they need to be done in a proper way and in a coordinated way. And whatever we put in our body needs to be put in a conscious way, or like Robie was saying, like to be food that we know it's made with love, that we know it's seasonal, that we know it's properly supplied to us. So, and it's free of pesticides and of chemicals, cellulose, like all of these things that oh, and another important thing is I think I would like to talk about sweeteners, all the different sweeteners that we don't realize. So there is research showing that despite all these companies try to use sweeteners to prevent us from getting too fat, so they're actually messing up our metabolism, because if you eat, so your body, again, if you give to your body something that has a certain level of sweetness, then your body is going to think you're going to eat that amount of calories. And so whatever you eat and you put in your stomach, your body is going to absorb as many calories as it expected from the level of sweetness you have given it. And so let's say you drink an apple juice, or you drink whatever thing with stevia or with a artificial sweetener that is not sugar, you're going to absorb almost the same amount of calories from both. Or they're going to, if not from the drink, because it's like, this thing doesn't contain anything, but you're drinking it with something. So you're drinking it with a burger, or you're drinking it with a plate of pasta or with a salad. You're going to absorb from your meal that you eat with an artificial sweetener more calories than the calories you have eaten together with the apple juice, because your body is being given the signal, there is this amount of calories to absorb from this food, do it. And that's what it's going to do. So you're giving your body instructions through your tongue. We give our body instructions through our tongue, telling to the body, this is what you're receiving right now. And so if we use things that are artificial, so they pretend to be a certain nutrients, but they're actually not, we just mess up our coordination with the warehouse that our body is. Yeah,
and that's really important. I was actually thinking of talking about sweeteners as well, so it's funny that you brought that up. One other thing that I've noticed for myself, even like processed white sugar has a really bad impact on me. And lately I've been trying to avoid any unnatural source of sugar. So I try to keep it to, honey, maple syrup, coconut sugar. Sometimes you can even use something like a date. That's just natural sugar right there in a beautiful little fruit form. So it's these things that are really important. And also another thing about going into the kind of like juices, like you might think if you buy, a container of orange juice from the store that it's going to be a healthy choice for you, but it actually depends a lot. Like really, when we're talking about like healthy juices, we're talking about like freshly squeezed, freshly processed juices, because I don't know if you guys know this, but the orange juice, a lot of the orange juices you get from the store, when it says from concentrate, what that actually means is that they took the orange juice, they stored it for sometimes even up to a year in like a semi-fluid form, and they reconstituted it with water and probably added some extra sugar in as well so that you wouldn't be able to taste, the semi like rancid orange flavor that would be there if they didn't do that. So it's something to really be aware of, when we're talking about a lot of health food stores do have sections with fresh pressed juices. These are totally good, really healthy. If you have a juicer at home, or if you don't have a juicer, you can even, use your blender and then strain afterwards, or, just drink it with the fiber. It's not going to hurt you if it's a little bit thicker, and the fiber is also really good for you. But a lot of these things, like, it's really important to be aware of, like, just the amount of sugar that we consume is one of the most damaging things in the, like, I guess you can say, the Western or the American diet. A lot of times, the big companies are trying to push it onto fat, but really sugar is just as important of a factor, if not more so. A lot of fats can be healthy even. So it really depends on the source of these things. That's really the important factors. It depends on what specific type of each category you're taking in. There's some things from each category that are good, some things that are bad. And it's important that you have a little bit from each category. Like, you wouldn't be able to have a complete diet without some kinds of sugars or without some kind of fats. But where are you getting that fat from? Is it from like an organic olive oil or coconut oil, or is it from, some canola oil that you already fried 2 batches of chicken tenders in that you're going to use a third time? And is it going to be, like, for sugar, is it going to be, sugar from high fructose corn syrup that's been highly processed and is not fully digestible by your gut microbiome? Or is it going to be something like honey that, is not just digestible, but also has a lot of other beneficial, like, longevity effects? And that's another thing it's like really important to be aware of, is just, yeah, like I said, being aware of what part of each category you're getting into, and which you're going to selectively choose to eat, and which you're going to selectively maybe choose to not eat.
Absolutely. And I also think thank you for mentioning the microbiome, because that's another part that we tend to not touch on. Like, people tend to not realize that what you're putting into your body is not only nourishment for you, for your body, but nourishment for this farm of microbes that we have in our gut. We literally are farming these microbes because they are a source of nutrients for us. This is something that happens in general in nature, like farming of beings that are a lot smaller than the bigger one they're part of. Like also ants used to farm animals as well, because they farm little insects.
Aphids.
Yeah,
They're called aphids, yeah.
yeah, aphids. They farm those aphids because those aphids produce some sort of like honey-like thing, like a fluid that the ant eat, and it's like, as we use bees to produce honey, the ants use aphids to produce this compound. And so we use our gut microbiome to produce a lot of things. We talked about that already in previous episodes. They produce vitamins, they allow us to produce hormones, and they're so important for us. And the kind of microbes we can have can be, it's a whole world. If you go into the microbiome world, it's a whole world. And I think we should dedicate a specific episode on that so that people understand better how these microbes work. And I want to give a more scientific perspective on that. So we're definitely going to have an episode on this, and probably going to interview someone who is specialized on the topic. But in general, the food we consume, it's also food for them. And so what are you giving to your microbiome? What kind of things are you giving? So all the fibers, for example, can be good and can be bad, because fibers are things, by definition, a fiber is a compound that your body does not digest. So meantime, cows and ruminants in general, they have specific stomachs that allow them to, thanks to their microbes, that allows them to digest cellulose or other types of fibers. We don't have that. And so all the fibers that we ingest are actually just things that go in our intestine and can have a double function, because from one side, they're very good to, they bind a lot of molecules such as glucose and fats, and allow a much slower release in our blood. And so that means that if you eat For example, for regarding the Reset Your Body event that the group cleanse, we just did group liver and gallbladder cleanse. And during this protocol, part of it is drinking a lot of apple malic acid, which is contained in the apple. So you can do that by drinking a lot of apple juice, or you can do that by eating a lot of apples. And this is very different, because if you eat apples, you're eating the fibers contained in the apples, and the fibers are going to bind the glucose and the fructose and all the things contained in the apple, and they're going to release it in your gut so that you absorb it in a way that is much smoother. If you drink apple juice all at once, or even throughout your day, you're going to have a spike of sugar in your blood every time you drink it, because the sugars are directly absorbed in our stomach. There is no obstacle from the fibers to actually release it in your blood. And so the effect is completely different, but it's still apple. So it's the same thing. So we don't realize how much fibers are important. I was actually impressed, for example, in Turkey. I went to Turkey like 10 years ago. And their appetizers are called mezes, and the meze are usually salads. So they eat a lot of salad as at the beginning of their meal. So they start their meal with salad. This means that they start their meal with something that then creates this bedding of fibers, that then whatever you eat afterwards is going to bind to these fibers, and it's going to be released in your blood in a much slower and much more healthy way than if you just eat pasta and rice and whatever immediately, because then these fibers can bind this up. And at the same time, the fibers are also prebiotic. So probiotic means microbes. Prebiotic means or do you say prebiotic or prebiotic?
Prebiotic, yeah.
Prebiotic. So prebiotic is basically the nutrients for those microbes. And so fibers are considered prebiotic because they can be digested or used by your microbes, but some are not used. And so everything that you consume ultimately has a function for your body. And so it's also important to be conscious of what you're putting into your body in that sense, because the fibers are important to cleanse your intestine and to allow proper bowel movements, but are also can be detrimental to your microbes, because if they're too much and they clog the space, you're basically throwing on top of this biofilm of microbes that are trying to survive in your gut, you're throwing to them stuff that just clog them, and they're like, I can't breathe, and they start changing into you start creating an environment that then allows the proliferation of microbes that are not good for you, such as microbes that are more into the peripheral hypoxia, for example, like so conditions of like lower oxygens or higher fats, or like so microbes that ultimately may not be good for you. So fibers are important. What kind of fibers you're giving to your body is really important, because there are small ones that are prebiotics and there are big ones that are just clogging your intestine. Like if you eat a lot of cellulose, that may not be good for you, or lignin, how you call it in English. Yeah. So
I'm not sure about
I think
that one.
all of the one, not the cellulose, but the one that the trunk of the trees is made of. What's the name of it in English?
It might be lignin. I'm not sure, to be honest, about that.
Lignin. Yeah, lignin. It's just I'm just trying to find the translation. Lignin. It's another one that is absolutely non-digestible. Not even cows can digest lignin. And so all of these things, unfortunately, like there are, as you're saying, there are a lot of industries, and they use products that are completely undigestible for us, and that really only clog our intestine, and not even our microbes can digest them. And so really it becomes a poison that you're putting in your body for no reason, that is useful to them as a filler or as a way of creating the texture that they want to create, and is not supposedly toxic because it's still natural, right? They can still say it comes from a plant, but it's actually a poison for your body because it's not going to be able to digest it. So there's so many things to watch out for in food to have a healthy, holistic, healthy life. And this is one of them, like watching for the kind of fibers you're giving to your microbes. Like I think we should have a whole episode on feeding your microbes, like how to better farm your microbes in your
Yeah.
gut.
I would love to have a microbiologist on and speak about that. But yeah, this is only like one of many topics also that relates to, the fundamentals of a holistic, healthy life. Food, it's so deep that, there's so many little intricacies that go into it. And there's a lot of other things you can do too that like, even I haven't gotten quite to this level yet where you can do specific tests about what foods genetically based on your makeup are more easily to be digested from your own body, right? So there's lots of different ways that you can kind of pursue this. You can take different tests because a lot of foods you might not have a full allergy to them, but they're still inflaming your body to a certain degree. Even if it's maybe not noticeable enough that you would notice, it's still creating these effects. So there's lots of ways that you can, go to a laboratory and get tested and see what's missing. Another thing you can do is, get complete blood work done so you know exactly all of the key nutrients in your body, what the levels are. Maybe you're missing a couple that you didn't even realize, and then you can find the right supplement to supplement your diet. And this kind of thing is especially important for people with restricted diets like myself, like vegetarians and vegans and people that can't eat certain things. It's important to kind of look into this and say, okay, not even just from a understanding intuitively, but you can even, we have a lot of modern scientific tools that can be used to assist with this, and it's in this case it's perfectly valid and one of the best ways that these tools can be used. So yeah, this is just one of many topics that we're going to be discussing in this series, living a healthy lifestyle, balancing your body. Before we get into the more spiritual topics of awakening, it's important to first set the foundation really strong, and this comes from the physical body. So I hope you guys learned something interesting from this episode. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be diving more into this series in the future, so stay tuned. This has just been part one. So thank you for listening to part one with us today.
Absolutely, we're going to talk a lot more about this and have a remember to turn on the bell to receive notifications for our episode whenever we have a new episode, and check out our website. And again, we're going to be hosting this Heal Retreat for the healthy embodiment of authentic living in October 3 to 6 in California. So if you guys are interested, check out my website at 360holisticcoach.com/heal. And just find Robie also Robie Newman-Paris on Instagram, and at 360holistic.coach on Instagram as well. And please Q&A, use it, comment, let us know, send us emails, let us know what you think. Or if you want to listen about a specific topic, we will be very interested to know that, because we are very, very happy to involve experts that talk about the topics you may be interested in. So let us know. And thank you for listening, and have a good day.
Yeah, all those links will be in the description also, so you can check that out. And yeah, have a great day, guys, and see you next time.